see. I did not tweet this, so I need to hurry up and try to do that. We got a lot of stuff to hit tonight. And
all well and good. I don't work tomorrow, so I'm up and I'm gonna be up and at 'em.
All right. So I want to welcome everybody who's joining, whether you're actually in or if you have not got in and you'll be catching this later. For those new to the channel, this is a return of my brother Jose. Good to have him back. If you guys don't know what all that smoke is, that's little frankincense and myrrh. So Jose, how are you feeling, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be back sooner than expected. But yeah, it's been there's been a need to get away and have a humbling experience so that I can be a little bit more refreshed in the spirit.
Yeah, I mean, we all need to do our refreshers and soul searching. I don't know if you guys will notice that I have in Jose's absence, I went back to doing, some more uploads, also mixing some of those in there because for a little while we were getting we were doing a lot of live stream only and classes, and that's not bad. But at the same time, one of the things that is probably my strength would be, researching and finding information and knowledge and angles to all these different things. And I need to make sure that I'm always doing a happy blend of the two. So that said, I'm glad to be back. First and foremost, we want to give all honor and glory to the Heavenly Father. Call halal Yahweh by Hashem Hamashiach Yahushai. So tonight's class, or I guess live, we'll just call it a live, not necessarily a class. We're going to be going into the Maccabean Revolt. I titled it that way because for those who do not know, that's where Hanukkah or Hanukkah or however people want to say it, that's where that comes from. It comes from the story of the Maccabees, which you will find in either in your KJV, which I'll show you, KJV 1611. It is in that edition. Or if you have it separately, like I do, like Jose has his there, and I have my Apocrypha, as you see, large print. When you get a little older, like some of us, it gets a little harder to see some of these things. So that said, if you guys notice, I'm looking out for a little bit. I'm going to be putting out links to this, so people who are not alerted to the fact that we're live, they'll know that we're live. And we're going to be getting into, of course, like I said, the Maccabean Revolt, and we're going to get into some origins of Christmas. Hint, spoiler alert, Christmas is not biblical. So that said, let's go ahead and get the intro going. Hold on a sec.
Move for fake news. Are you a ock or a op? Can't choose. You fake too. Ruach HaKodesh, my force field like can't bruise. The Most High, put my feet on the gas. I can't cruise. Praise the Most High, feet on the grass. I can't lose. Stick to the plan like we building our house. Now make room. You ain't never seen me in this color like Beirut. People acting like repenting is something they can't do. Are you dumb or not? People choosing hell over heaven, but they know it high. Of course, you can find me in the present like I know the spot. He gave me these words, what a blessing. I'ma pour it out. People seeing water where my breath is. Yeah, I flow a lot. Holy Spirit shining in the dark like you control the tide. People out here thinking it's a game, but you control the fry. If you thinking what I'm saying is lame, I can't socialize from now on. I'm just gonna stay in my lane like I'm motorized. What you thought? I should dumb it down to maintain. You going off, the devil turning up, so I am too. No going soft. Every scripture in that Bible a sword. This is a war. What you thought, an Naviel gon' help you see clear, just like the frost. The Most High speaks, but they don't fear him. When he talk, you don't want to hear them words, don't know you. So depart, repent. Yeah.
Do good in thy good pleasure, O Zion. Build up the walls of Jerusalem. Oh, Father, hear me. Forgive me. And purge me from my sins and iniquities. Hallelujah. Oh, Father, we praise you. Elohim. In the last days, thy sons and daughters shall prophesy and call upon the name Yod-Heh, Wad-Heh. Humble, let's meditate. And take, cry aloud and spare not. Let's get it.
I'm watching that clock like we in the fourth quarter. Messiah is coming. It's almost the hour. We roll with 144,000. He blessed the elect and he's showing his power. And I've been fasting, so that mean I'm hungry. So that mean the demons I have to devour. Reading Ephesians, I don't fight with flesh and blood. I fight with principality and powers. Please tell the evil, don't challenge me. My name is humble, I gotta be, I'm a descendant from the tribe of Benjamin. Don't wake the wolf up inside of me, Heaven to hell, bottom or top. I pick the top like a lottery, Get it? Lottery top, pick. I pick the top like a lottery, Forget it. Israelite, yeah, my squad is the biggest. Its nationality is not a religion. Pharisees trying to catch you slipping. They watch you like a museum exhibit. I don't have to fake the laws, I live it. You are living a facade, I get it. And you don't believe in y'all, you ignorant. Visionary, don't fit your description, I'm gone.
Yod-Heh, Wad-Heh, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob.
Yod-Heh, Wad-Heh. Humble, let's meditate. And take, cry aloud and spare not. Let's get it.
All right, so we are back and we're ready to go. So I figure that we will go on ahead and get started on the Maccabean Revolt, which led to the holiday known as Hanukkah. So for that, first off, if you guys are following along at home, go to the book of Maccabees. I have some. I'm going to have Jose already going there, and then I got a couple of scriptures that I want us to go into and read, starting off, and then I have a video that I will share, and then we'll stop at a certain points to be able to show the Bible tying in with what is talked about there. So give me a second. Let me hop over, pull that video up. Yeah, so Jose, going ahead, and I want you to go ahead and start from the top. That way we can kind of get an understanding of the stage that's being set here in ancient Greece, which at this time Greece had become. Oh, I'll just let him read, and you guys can understand from there. So go ahead and start Maccabees 1:1.
Book of First Maccabees in the Apocrypha, chapter 1 and verse 1. And it happened, after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the end of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries, and nations, and kings, who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them, while he was yet alive.
All right, so
So
stop right there. So what we have going on right here, it's showing the rise of Alexander the Great, so-called Alexander the Great. We'll just call him Alexander the Greek. This is showing his rise of his kingdom. Towards the end of his life, he's obviously feeling it. Well, it shows that his conquer of Darius, Darius of Persia. Hold on a second. I'm getting there also. And so, okay, I'm there. And so let's go on ahead and I wanted to. Actually, yeah, you can go on ahead. Keep going.
So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then died, and his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth.
All right, that's where I wanted to start there. So right now we have Alexander. He's risen up. He's subdued most of the known world. You can find this here, right here in the Apocrypha, whether it's in your 1611, whether it's in the Septuagint, whether it is in a separate Apocrypha. You also can see this in secular history. This is something that's not even debated, whether you are religious, non-religious, atheist, whatever. This is something that is actual known history.
Yeah, the four generals of Alexander that ruled, they were known as the Diadochi or some Diadochi or something like that.
yeah. The pronunciation is a little off, but yeah, it was those four generals. You had the Ptolemaic, you had the Ptolemy, you had Seleucid, you
And
had
Antiochus.
Antiochus, which Antiochus is the one which we're going to focus on, and I'm forgetting the fourth one. What was the fourth one? You remember? Well, it's
Antiochus Epiphanes? That's one of them.
yeah.
Ptolemy, Seleucid, and yeah.
Well, right now it's not as important, but we're going to focus because what happens shortly after that is eventually those they start warring against each other, and then it reduces down in number. But we're going to focus on the one which had rule and dominion over Israel, or actually won't even say Israel. We'll say over the kingdom of Judah, because the northern kingdom, for the as a kingdom as a whole, was gone. Were there remnants of the northern kingdom which were possibly mingled in with the southern tribes? Of course. But we're going to focus on what was going on with the kingdom of Judah, because this is where this holiday comes from. So I want you to skip down to First Maccabees 1 and 16, so we can get into Antiochus. What was going with Antiochus? Why there was a such thing as why a Maccabean revolt had to happen.
First Maccabees 1 and 16. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of 2 realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him, and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof.
All right, so stop right there, because there we've set this and we've established it with the Bible. Now I'm gonna hop into this clip real quick because it will explain something that is vastly, I feel like under I guess I don't know what's the word to say, but the Christian church completely ignores this.
Underrepresented.
Underrepresented. That's what I was looking for. This point is very underrepresented, and it's if you don't understand what is going on in this period, there is no possible way, and I say this definitively, there is no possible way you can have a firm grasp on what is going on in the New Testament. And this is why Hebrew Israelites, like ourselves, go back and forth with Christianity so much. This is why a lot of Christians do not understand where Hebrew Israelites are coming from, because they don't do the, even I say, even the biblical history and understanding what's going on. Whether you read from the Apocrypha or not, just understand what was going on in those regions during biblical time periods. They don't focus on that. So therefore, they have a hard time understanding a lot of New Testament. Two, I would say, is if you don't get into these things and understand time periods and how long of a time certain things are, a lot of this stuff is going to go right over your head. So that's why it's important to come back and read these different things, because one thing about the so-called apocryphal books, they are chalked with history. A lot of the history that can be verified within secular history. So even if you try to say, well, my Protestant church, which, even if you're not a Protestant, if you're a Baptist, if you're a Lutheran, if you're Jehovah's Witness, if you're a Mormon, a lot of these faiths, most of these faiths outside of the Catholic Church, all reject this information. And therefore, since the church heads reject it and seminary schools reject it, pastors don't know this information. Therefore, their congregations don't know this information. Therefore, it leads to a lot of misinterpretations, mainly with the book of Galatians is one example I would use. What's another one which you would say, Jose, which they completely mess up because they don't understand this time period?
Let's see.
I mean, you could say Galatians, you could say Corinthians.
I was thinking Corinthians. Like initially, you read my mind, but like there's one verse that outright says, I forget if it was in either first or the second one, where it says, or Paul specifically states, "Wherefore, brethren, I will have you know that when our fathers traveled with Moses under the cloud," like it gives you an understanding, but it goes over Christians' heads like way too easily.
Because they don't understand this key time period right here. This video is called When Judaism Met Hellenization. Please, brethren out there, forgive for some of the artistic renderings that they chose to use, but the information does good. I explained a lot of this stuff. So we're going to go in. Jose, let me know at the point you want to stop it on. This is only a roughly 5 to 6 minute video, but there's a lot of good information in here to substantiate what we are talking about, and what you will see that we've already read a little bit of in the book of Maccabees, and what we are going to attest to further on in the book of Maccabees. So
yeah, before you begin playing it, I just want
Sure.
to state that you need to know this information, number one, because you discover who Paul is trying to talk to in all of his letters.
Exactly.
The process of how it came to be. And also, every single other captivity that Israel has gone under, whether it be the Assyrian one, the Babylonian one, Persian and Medes, they are all solid secular history that people can discover this if they take a history course in college. But when you read the Bible, that normally consists of only 66 books, you're going to notice a very big gap between the Persian captivity by the end of Daniel's story, and then suddenly when you begin Matthew, Rome is in place.
Or actually, more or less, Malachi.
Malachi, okay.
Yeah, Malachi is where you get that gap, and that's where in the church you hear this 400-year gap in the Bible. This is where this gap comes from. Now, granted, though Martin Luther himself wasn't the one who took all these out, Martin Luther's interpretations and his thinking and his debates, his followers, are what led to these books being taken out of the Bible. And if you're a Christian, listen to this. No, these books are not considered. These books are called deuterocanonical. What deuterocanonical means is secondary canon. It means that they are canon, but a lot of the church does not weigh in on them because they don't believe that they have value as far as salvation. So because they deem these books as not important to salvation, they just throw them aside. But you could talk to any seminary teacher or anybody, especially in the Catholic Church, and they'll tell you, yes, these are secondary canon. They are good as far as understanding history. I believe they're good as far as more than history, but we'll leave it at that. What else was I going to say? So yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and hop into the video. Whatever I think of, we'll hop back in. But oh yeah, as I said, let me know. And anybody in the crowd, if you have any questions as you guys pop in here, please let me know. We'll do our best to try to explain it. This is 2 whole books. So there's not only a first Maccabees, there's a second Maccabee. It's a lot of information, and it goes over what was happening with a particular family and leading up from the Hasmonean dynasty to a transfer into the Herodian dynasty, in which you guys will see when you start off the book of Maccabees, you have King Herod. If you understand how they go from being under captivity to the Persians to now they're under captivity to the Romans, and their king is not an Israelite. The king is from the nation of Idumea or Edom. This is how you understand and get this knowledge of what was going on. So let's go on ahead. All right. Oh,
kingdom. King Ptolemy Lagides resettled many of the Jews into Alexandria. There, circa 250 BC, during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, 285 to 247 BC, the translation of the Pentateuch and, later, of the other sacred books into Greek was undertaken. This translation is known as the Septuagint, 70. In 189 BC, Antiochus III, Antiochus the Great, a king of the Seleucid dynasty, reconquered Judea from Egypt. The Seleucids would spread Greek customs and beliefs to the peoples under their governance, a phenomenon referred to as Hellenization. The word Hellenistic comes from the root word Hellas, which was the ancient Greek word for Greece. The Hellenic age was...
Now, let me stop it right there. At this point here, a lot of the Israelites, or I'll say Judeans, because most of the Northern Kingdom was gone. A lot of the Judeans at that time, many of them were going after the customs on their own willingly of the Greeks. They were doing it on their own accord. But there still were plenty of Judeans which were holding firm to the Torah and holding to the law, statutes, and commandments. And they were not trying to go in the way of the Gentiles. Actually, can you pull that scripture up for me?
Yeah.
Because this is, and so at this time when you had Antiochus III, there were certain things like gymnasiums that were starting to become a thing, which
okay.
if you guys don't understand what a gymnasium is, it's not the same one where you were in middle school and you had to go dress out and have PE. This is not the same kind of gymnasium. This is where, if you guys have heard of Greco-Roman wrestling, this is where that started. And gymnasiums were male only. In a lot of these gymnasiums, it was a lot of homosexuality that happened in these gymnasiums, which that's something that is against Torah law. Not only that, there was a lot of pedophilia going on. And so a lot of these things that were going on, not only pedophilia, there was incest going on. There was a lot of things going on inside these gymnasiums that were not okay. But on top of that, you had a lot of Judeans who were starting to eat abominable foods. They were starting to not keep Sabbath. They were starting to do a lot of things going away from the covenant. So let's continue. I just want to say that. So at this point, they were doing it voluntarily. Oh, go ahead. You got the scripture?
Yeah. Well, you were talking about chapter 1 and for like going after the ways of the heathen. Like that's what
Yes.
you were going for. Okay.
Uh-huh.
First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 11. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen.
The place of exercise, that is that gymnasium that we were talking about. The same way that the Greeks did it. Continue.
And made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief.
Mm-hmm. All right. So yeah, let's hop back in. So there we are establishing that the Israelites on their own accord first start going after these heathens and start doing the ways of the heathens. But we'll see at a certain time, it'll start getting forced upon them.
Was the time when Greek culture was pure and unaffected by other cultures. The Old Testament community of the faithful struggled against the Hellenistic influences. Written at the beginning of the 3rd century BC, the books of Tobit, Baruch, and the Epistle of Jeremiah were aimed at the reaffirmation of the ethical and religious ideals of Judaism and its defense from the Greek influences. In 168 BC, the Seleucid king Antioch IV Epiphanes, 175 to 163 BC, beset Judea with murderous persecutions, striving to exterminate its faith. The Temple of Solomon was turned into a pagan temple. The books of the scriptures were being burned, and observance of all the religious rituals became banned. The persecution.
All right, so that's just a little bit of going into it. You know what scripture I want? Let's see.
I'm looking at it. Still in chapter 1?
Yes, it's still in chapter 1. So yeah, hop down to what is it, 20?
29?
I don't think you need to hop that. Yeah, going ahead to 29.
Okay. First Maccabees 1 and verse 29. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive, and possessed the cattle. Then builded they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a strong hold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. They stored it also with armor and victuals, and when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it. insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. Whereupon the city was made a habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own
Oh,
children left her.
yeah, now I want to stop at that part. That's when you started to have some of the people who were keeping the faith, who were more zealous about the law, who, they didn't go for the first kind of, swell of Hellenization for the people who went on their own accord. And then the next, after they kind of started forcing their way and taking over and controlling and seizing the city and seizing the movements of the people, there were certain bands of people who decided to flee from the city and go out to the wilderness, just like the forefathers had done many a times before, having to be out in the wilderness. And that way that they could try to keep their ordinances. But for these evil and wicked men, that was not enough. So continue.
Okay. I think we should get to the point to verse 41.
Yeah, go ahead.
Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strained laws of the land. Let me skip on ahead to 49 a little bit.
So at this point, he's forcing all of the Greek laws. He's forcing the Greek religion, all of their different gods and all that stuff. All of this is being forced on them at this time period. Not only are they being told that they cannot follow the covenant that they have with the Father and the law, statutes, and commandments, which are not only a religion, but their culture, their heritage. This is being forced out of them. Many heathens who had came into Judea and were following along and kind of basically had become converts in a sense. They were, the proselytes? They were said, well, you know what? Hey, I don't have to hold on to this anymore. That's not the law of the land anymore. So I'm cool with doing what the Greeks do. And many Israelites, after being forced by the sword to do it, they did it also. So, go ahead and continue.
Verse 49. To the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said, he should die. Let me skip down a little bit more.
So as he said there, it literally became, if you were following the laws, it was a death sentence.
So, verse 56. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire.
And can you say that again? What did they do to the books of the law?
They had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire.
So if you were keeping any scrolls, because in that time they didn't literally have like books like we have, they had the scrolls. If you had scrolls that were helping you remember the Torah in any kind of way, if they found them, they burned them. And a lot of times that was a death sentence for hiding them. This is another way which they fully established, no, you're going to be a Greek. You're going to follow into our way of doing things, or you die.
And verse 57, and wheresoever was found with and wheresoever was found with any the book of the testament, or if any consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death.
So that means you want to circumcise your children, that was a death sentence.
You want to try to keep the Sabbath, death sentence.
You want to eat kosher and you don't want to eat abominable foods, because pork was a big part of the Greek diet and the Roman diet for that matter. They literally, for their gods that they sacrificed to, like one of them being Saturnalia, and Zeus and Apollo and all these different people, if you did not sacrifice to their gods, which you had to take, they took our synagogues and they literally profaned them with all their different gods, Jupiter and all this stuff like that. And they say, you're going to follow this and you're going to sacrifice abominable animals on your altars. So, I mean, in every way that they could separate you from your culture and religion, that's what they did. And this, at this period now, this is Antiochus IV. This started at Antiochus, at the end of Antiochus II, when they started kind of going along with it. By the time Antiochus III, you started having more people follow this. By Antiochus IV, people were being forced. So we're talking about now, roughly probably 100-year period that this has been going on. Oh, continue.
Verse 60. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And they hanged the infants about their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Israel were fully resolved, and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they chose rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died, and there was very great wrath upon Israel.
So, like you just read there, and I know this should be pretty plain, but in case for some people who are not paying attention to what was going on, the totality of things, basically in every possible way, the Greeks were trying to stomp out any following, even secretly or mildly, of the culture, of the religion, of the law, statutes, and commandments, of the history, of the prophets, any residue of it. And they wanted it to get to a point where you don't even literally remember this stuff anymore. This is what was going on in these provinces. This is what was going on through Galatia. This is what was happening through I'm trying to think of some of the other cities that I'm forgetting. I'm trying to remember. What were some of those other Greek provinces? Actually, let me just flip in the Bible and see. I remember. Because
Corinth.
Corinth. That's the one I was trying to remember. Corinth was a big place. Corinth was a very, very large area where that was going on.
Ephesus also.
Yep.
Most of Paul's letters were aimed to Greeks.
Most of it was to Greeks and to Romans, but majority of them, I want to say easily, probably 65% of his letters were to Greeks, and it should make sense why. Paul comes along, you got to remember at this time, this is at what, maybe 160 BC.
Did the video actually say it?
Oh, wait a minute, let me go back. I think the video did say it. Let's see. 189 BC. So I was about a couple years off. So this happened around 189 BC. We got to remember when Alexander the Greek first went in to these areas, this was at around 330 BC. We got to remember, before that, the Israelites were in captivity to the Persians, going back even before that. So you had a continual following off of many people in Judea, even really keeping everything to a full, and being able to really completely follow the law, statutes, and commandments to the fullest of their abilities, because they were under captivity. And this is no different than this. At this point now, Israel is a vassal state. And what happens in a vassal state? Somebody else is making your rules. And at this point, you got a new ruler who decided, no, you're going to do as I. It's almost like getting a dictator, and who he says no, it's going to go exactly like this. Some of the other rulers were like, hey, as long as they're paying their taxes, hey, they can stay down there and do their own little religious thing. But and don't get it mistaken. That doesn't mean that they were treating them nicely. It just means that it wasn't what's going on here. What's going on here is literally the equivalent to like the Spanish Inquisition. This is people being murdered at mass. So sorry. Go ahead and continue, or you read.
Actually, no, we were gonna. Yeah, that was the end of the chapter. We were gonna go back to.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, we're gonna hop back into it. So here we go.
Executed people and martyrs in those days would draw consolation in the prophecies of the Book of Daniel that was composed circa 165 BC on the basis of older traditions. The Hebrew Bible includes Daniel in the Ketuvim writings, while Christian biblical canons group the work with the major prophets. The Book of Judith was written around that time too, and later translated into Greek. Included in the Septuagint and the Catholic and Orthodox Christian Old Testament of the Bible, but excluded from the Hebrew canon and assigned by Protestants to the Apocrypha. In 164 BC, the Jews rebelled against Antiochus the Great. They achieved quick success under the leadership of Judah the Maccabee from the Hasmonean clan. The Hasmoneans were a dynasty of the
You're muted.
That I was like, all right, now we need to skip ahead a little bit so we can go into the Hasmoneans, and this is what the book of Maccabees is known for. Maccabees was the nickname of Judas. And it's not the same like Judas who betrayed Christ. Judas was a very, very common name back then. It's the same as if your name was like, for lack of better saying in the Latin community, if your name was Jose. It's that common. So Judas, he was known as the Hammer. So let's go on ahead to, guess what, start at 2?
Yeah.
All right, yes, go ahead and start at 2 and 1.
So I thought it should be. I'd want to share my screen because I have pulled.
Oh, if you got something, go ahead. I'll share.
Yeah, at the JewishVirtualLibrary.org, the Hasmonean Dynasty family tree.
Well, yeah, they were just
to read alongside with to make it more official looking. You get me?
Okay, yeah. Let's see. Do you have it up?
Yeah.
Or do you need me to pull it up?
No, I'll do it.
Oh yeah, just go ahead and I'll share it. Because this is very important for people to understand.
All right. So you are able to see it?
Yeah.
All right. So First Maccabees chapter 2 and verse 1. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Joarib, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons: Johanan, called Caddis, Simon, called Thasi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar, called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was Apus.
All right, so that gave you the nucleus of this family, and also I want to say what they were, Levites. I'm trying to remember. I think they might have been Levites.
Yeah, I'm about 90% sure they were Levites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right, because eventually they start talking about the high. I remember them talking about the main high priest. It's been a while since I've went through the earlier parts of Maccabees. But yeah, wherever you want to start, because we can't read it all, definitely for time's sake. It is a lot because this goes through all the different battles and sieges, and it goes through some of the victories, some of the downfalls. It goes through some treachery that happens, and people being betrayed. It goes into pretty much. Actually, I won't keep spoiling. I'll just let you let you read.
I guess I'll start over here at verse 19. First Maccabees chapter 2 and verse 19. Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice. Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left.
Okay. And so that's so I guess I would ask for you to skip to the third chapter. So there we're establishing what was going on. They decided that no, we're not going to follow the king's ordinances. We're going to follow the law, statutes, and commandments. We're not going to violate. We don't care. You can threaten us with death, whatever. We don't care. So they decided, hey, you're just gonna have to go to war with us. And even though they were completely outmatched, it started off with a war within basically the colonizers, which were in their region. So it started off as a small local battle until it eventually kept evolving. And so at this point, now there's been a couple of victories going on. So go ahead and continue.
So by this point in chapter 3, Mattathias, the father of Judas Maccabeus, he ended up dying and passing away. So Judas takes up his cause, and here's where chapter 3 starts. First Maccabees chapter 3 and verse 1. Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he got his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him, and he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. Verse 6. Wherefore the wicked shrank for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because salvation prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings, and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel. So
let's stop it there in case people don't get what's going on completely. Not only is he fighting the Greek invaders, he is smoting even Israelites who don't want to come back to the law, statutes, and commandments. So that's how serious they are about the wickedness and unlawful acts that they see that are going on. But continue.
So that he was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Well, for the sake of time, let's go to 27.
Mm-hmm.
Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army.
Now, at this point, here I'll hop in. At this point, this is when it's breaking into a full-on war. Antiochus is completely involved, and he's been pissed off at what's been going on. So he's like, all right, now assemble all the forces. Let's put this rebellion down. I'll continue.
I'll skip down to 34. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done, as also concerning them that dwelt in Judah and Jerusalem. To wit, that he should send an army against them to destroy and root out the strength of Israel, and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place.
Okay. So you want to skip to, because I guess you can go ahead and skip to what, 6? Or do you want to go through 5?
Oh, verse 4 is actually the establishing of the dedication.
Oh yeah. That's right. Sorry, my fault. My apologies.
No
Yeah, go
worries.
ahead.
What's a good place to start? Because we're trying not to read the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, in all honesty, every part of this is important, and so you all need to be reading all of this. And I don't mean, when I say all this, I'm not just talking about one chapter. I'm talking about, what is it, 17? Let me see. I think it's 17 chapters in the first book.
Something like that, 16 or 17.
16 chapters.
Yeah.
So all 16 of these books are important, and I would say the same thing with the second book, which there is 15 books. And so all of this is important to understand and get a true grasp of what was going on at this time period.
So by chapter 4, the beginning of chapter 4, you see Judas like about to encounter a very strong enemy camp, like with a huge amount of numbers. And yeah, this is where the Greeks had control over the temple, and it was time for Judas to clear them out of there. First Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 7. And they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed, and compassed round about with horsemen, and these were experts of war. Then said Judas to the men that were with him, Fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid of their assaults. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now therefore let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure the Lord will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face this day, that so all the heathen may know that there is one who delivereth and saveth Israel. Then the strangers lifted up their eyes and saw them coming over against them. Wherefore they went out of the camp to battle, but they that were with Judas sounded their trumpets. So they joined battle, and the heathen, being discomfited, fled into the plain. Howbeit all the hindmost of them were slain with the sword, for they pursued them unto Gazera, and into the plains of Idumea, and Nazotus, and Jamnia, so there were slain of them upon 3,000 men.
No, and wait a minute. Let's go back again, in case people missed that. Where were they at?
Unto Gazera, and unto the plains of Idumea.
Onto the plains of Idumea. Let's keep that in mind. This is going to be important for later on. But I don't know. We won't have time to get to it. But keep this in mind for later on. What goes on and what takes place. Continue.
This done, Judas returned again with his host from pursuing them, and said to the people, Be not greedy of the spoils, inasmuch as there is a battle before us. Skipping on down. Verse 23. Then Judas returned to spoil the tents, where they got much gold and silver and blue silk, and purple of the sea, and great riches. After this they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving, and praised the Lord in heaven, because it is good, because his mercy endureth forever. Thus Israel had a great deliverance that day. Let me see. So at this point, the Greeks were cleared out, and Judas and his camp is seeing the defilement of the temple before them.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 38. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profaned, and the gates burned up, and shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest, or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priest's chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made great lamentations, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried toward heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So they go through the process of rededicating the temple, and
This is
by four. I read up to 4 and
and
41.
I was going to say for those that don't know, that commemoration to this is the Feast of Dedications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they had essentially repeated the same process that Solomon had done when he was first building the temple. They were rededicating it in that fashion to try to get it back to its former estate spiritually. Verse 51. Actually, verse 52. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Caslawa, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it. Even in that was it dedicated with songs and cisterns and harps and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshipping and praising the God of heaven, who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered burnt offerings with gladness, and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold, and with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed, and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month Caslawa, with mirth and gladness.
And this right here is the very first Hanukkah. You know, but forgive me if other people pronounce it differently. I know that I think Orthodox Jewish community pronounces it differently. But for those who want to know, what is Hanukkah? Where does it come from? What is it about? That is all the stuff that led up to that. What he talked about them pushing the Greeks out of that area and then being able to overtake the temple again, to be able to push out the abominations, to re-cleanse it and to rededicate it, was a great victory. And it was able to give honor and reverence to the Father to be able to have the sanctuary back.
Have you, one question,
Mhm.
have you ever heard of an alternate retelling of the story of Hanukkah? And that's the reason that it was celebrated was because oil that was normally supposed to last 1 day ended up miraculously lasting 8 days.
No, I've never heard that before.
I could have sworn that an episode of the Nickelodeon cartoon Rugrats
Mhm.
had that as the origin story of.
I wouldn't be surprised that or South Park probably did something like that. But what I'd always heard, even like loosely when I was first hearing about it, and I'm saying probably at maybe like 16 or 17. I have no clue who told me this because I didn't grow up around any practicing any practicing Jewish, or I mean anybody that was practicing Judaism. But I think maybe just badgering my uncle was a pastor, and I think he told me that it was because of a battle that was done. But I was never given the context of the battle and why they were having the battle. And all I knew is that the Israelites were fighting the Greeks. But I want to say maybe about four years ago or so, that's when I first, started hearing that, oh, well, it had to do with, Hellenization and stuff like that. And so, um, as I finally got into the truth, and the first time I read the Apocrypha, which I read over the Old Testament, handful of times here and there. I read the New Testament a whole bunch, but I never really read the Apocrypha. And when I read the Apocrypha, then I was able to understand it. So for those who are not going to study, secular history specifically into that time frame, the only place you can find this, unless you get with somebody in Judaism who might go through the Mishnah, they might be able to break it down for you the same way. But as far as in English, that's you're only going to find this in the Apocrypha. So this is how you find the history of it. And so glad you guys got to hear that part. I mean, it gets even more interesting. You start hearing about later on they meet up with a group of people called the Lacedaemonians, and that for me that was one of the most interesting parts, which we don't have time to get to that. I think that's like, was it chapter 12, I think. So, and we only made it to, what is that, probably about, was it 4?
Yep.
Yeah.
The 4.
Yeah, because, and then I think at the beginning of 5, that's when you have the death of Antiochus. 6, they extend the campaign and fight into more areas. And then, oh, wait a minute, I'm trying to remember the new king that comes up after Antiochus. He's even more brutal and more, he's more brutal as in he's a better general. And so he escalates the war. I'll say that much. And so then you start having the Israelites starting, and this is where you start seeing the transition going into the New Testament, because then you start seeing not only that partnership with the Lacedaemonians, which if you guys look up the archaeology and stuff like that, you'll find out the Lacedaemonians are the Spartans. You also see a tie-in with the Romans also.
Speaking of the New Testament.
Sure.
So, it's only with the Apocrypha and First Maccabees that you'll be able to understand where it was that Yahushua or Christ celebrates this particular holiday in John chapter 10.
Yeah, sure. But another thing that I would say also is, though there was this victory that was had in these certain regions in Judea, and you started to see some of the freeing that was going on even into Egypt, pushing the Greeks out of those areas, out of some of these areas. Because you got to remember, not only did the Greeks control Israel, they controlled Babylon, they controlled the nation of Edom, they controlled Moab's territory, Ammon's territory, the Persian territory, so basically all like Saudi Arabia and all that stuff. They controlled over into North Africa, so went across Egypt and all the way across to the areas like Morocco. The Greek Empire had the whole Mediterranean, and they even had Rome. At that time, Rome was a small little nothing town, but they had all of that within their grasp and control. Then eventually you started to have the rise of the Roman Empire. And it rose pretty quickly, actually. And once it did, because of those partnerships. Because here's the difference with the Romans and the Greeks overall. Both of them were still brutal to the people. But the difference between the Greeks and the Romans were the Romans would say, all right, you guys want to practice whatever beliefs or religions you guys have, cool, keep that over there. But you better pay these taxes. The Greeks were like, no, you're going to pay your taxes and you're going to follow our customs and you're going to forsake yours. And so that period, which I want to say you could go back to, see, Alexander kind of came into power and took over everything around the 300 BC time frame. Is about the time where he had already taken over everything and he was about dead at that point. Oh, go ahead.
Are we gonna have enough time to go over the origins of Christmas?
Yeah, we'll have some time.
All right.
I'm not gonna go deep into it. I'm gonna touch on a couple of things. But yeah, I'm trying to remember some key things I want to get out there and let people know. But yeah, at that point when you had I gotta remember who was the fourth general. This is bothering me. I can't remember who the fourth one is, and I haven't been able to remember for a while. So I gotta remember who Alexander's four generals were.
Cassander.
Cassander? Is that who it was?
Ptolemy.
Yeah, you're right, Cassander. That's the
look it
one. We always forget it's Cassander. And yeah, you were talking about known as the Theodochi.
Ah.
That's what it is. So yeah, it's Cassander. We always forget because I always forget Cassander because Ptolemy kind of knocked him off, I believe, quickly. And then eventually Antiochus, after a lot of long feuding, I believe he took no, I'm wrong. Antiochus, I believe, took out Cassander, and Ptolemy and Seleucus continued fighting for a long period until Ptolemy took over Seleucus, and then you had the two. Because they were trying their best to have, all four of them wanted what Alexander had. They wanted to rule all of it. And through that fighting and feuding, they and the rebellions that they were having, because it wasn't only, in Judea, you had the Persians, which were trying to, free themselves also. You had the Babylonians who were trying to free themselves also. You had the Egyptians who were trying, and you had the nations in North Africa were all fighting. And that's when you start having the rise of Hannibal of Carthage. And so when you start having that, and then at the same time, all of these kingdoms are rising up. That's when you have that little period where Hannibal takes Sicily. And at that point there, well, I might have that a little bit out of order, but for a certain amount of time, Hannibal did take over that part of Sicily. And then you had, at this time period, when we're going to the end of Maccabees, that's when you start having the sunset of the Greek Empire. Where, it's not like it goes out of existence. It just no longer is the number one hegemony. And you have the Roman Empire rise. And after the Romans defeated the Greeks, because then you had that little period where it was the Greco-Roman Empire where they were a little bit combined. The Romans took out them and took over basically all their territories. And then they took the same approach of dominating and controlling everything. But they, for the most part, stayed out of most of the affairs, local matters. But that if you allow, it's kind of like if you allow somebody to get into your business, don't be surprised what they do when they get into your business. And that led into how Israel eventually, or Judea, ended up being more of a vassal state and really severely controlled by the Romans on a high degree because of the fighting between two brothers. But that's getting way off topic. So sorry about that. That's for another day. There's just, I don't know, biblical history is very interesting to me. It's a lot we can go into. But any points that you wanted to hop on, Jose?
Nope. Let's move on.
All right. So where do you want to continue with?
You can go ahead and let me know if there's anywhere you want me to read from.
I kind of want to go into, I know this is skipping quite a bit. This is skipping a lot of the history, but I say again, you all need to go back and read this. I want to skip to the end of Jonathan's rule. Because in Second Maccabees, then you have Nicanor, which, and you do have the death of Stephen and things like that. So, but let's get in. I want to get into, because at the end of is it Jonathan I'm thinking of? At the end of Jonathan, where the Hasmonean dynasty became where you had the Hasmonean dynasty and the mixture of the Herodian dynasty, and that's when it switched over into the Herodian dynasty. Let me see. Let me hop down and read real quick.
Okay. The last one that was alive was Simon.
Simon, that's what I'm thinking of, not Jonathan. Simon. That's what I'm thinking of. Simon. Because his story, because I remember a lot of people were really scared when it got down to Simon, because they were like, well, he's a little bit more timid. He's not really known as a warrior. Man, we might be in a lot of trouble with him. But the difference between him and Judas, which Judas was like, more of a take it to the front lines type of, like, actual soldier. Simon was more of a strategist, and that's where he really did well there. So it's kind of ironic that the strategist, how he met his end.
The John that is mentioned at the very end of chapter 16, this is John Hyrcanus?
Oh, wait a minute. Is it? If that's John Hyrcanus, then we need to go back up, and we actually probably need to read into that a little bit. Let me see. That's what I said. It's been a minute since I've been in Maccabees. I normally read for every feast of dedication. I mostly double into, of course, the retaking of the synagogue or the temple, but I haven't read the part about John Hyrcanus in quite some time. Yes, in there within the walls. Okay, yeah. Let me see. Timotheus is slain. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's why I'm all the way into Second Maccabees. So yeah, I'm at 15. Judas and John. Actually, going ahead and go to skip to 16.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm already there.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool. All right, then started 1.
First Maccabees chapter 16 and 1. Then came up John from Gazara, and told Simon his father what Sendebius had done. Wherefore Simon called his 2 eldest sons, Judas and John, and said unto them, I and my brethren and my father's house have ever from our youth unto this day fought against the enemies of Israel, and things have prospered so well in our hands, that we have delivered Israel oftentimes. But now I am old, and ye, by God's mercy, are of a sufficient age. Be ye instead of me and my brother, and go and fight for our nation, and the help from heaven be with you. So he chose out of the country 20,000 men of war with horsemen, who went out against Sendebius, and rested that night at Modin. And when as they rose in the morning and went into the plain, behold, a mighty great host, both of footmen and horsemen, came against them. Howbeit there was a water brook betwixt them. So he and his people pitched over against them. And when he saw that the people were afraid to go over the water brook, he went first over himself, and then the men seeing him passed through after him. That done, he divided his men and set the horsemen in the midst of the footmen, for the enemy's horsemen were very many. Then sounded they with the holy trumpets, whereupon Sendebius and his hosts were put to flight, so that many of them were slain, and the remnant gat them to the stronghold. At that time was Judas, John's brother, wounded, but John still followed after them until he came to Cedron, which Sendebius had built. So they fled even unto the towers in the field of Azotus, wherefore he burned it with fire, so that there were slain of them about 2,000 men. Afterward he returned into the land of Judah in peace. Moreover, in the plain of Jericho was Ptolemus the son of Abubus made captain, and he had abundance of silver and gold, for he was the high priest's son-in-law. Wherefore his heart being lifted up, he thought to get the country to himself, and thereupon consulted deceitfully against Simon and his sons to destroy them. Now Simon was visiting the cities that were in the country, and taking care for the good ordering of them. At which time he came down himself to Jericho with his sons, Mattathias and Judas, in the 117th year, in the 11th month, called Sabbat. Wherefore, where the son of Abubus, receiving them deceitfully into a little hold, called Docus, which he had built, made them a great banquet, howbeit he had hid men there. So when Simon and his sons had drunk largely, Ptolemy and his men rose up and took their weapons and came upon Simon into the banqueting place and slew him, and his 2 sons and certain of his servants. In which doing he committed a great treachery and recompensed evil for good. Then Ptolemy wrote these things and sent to the king, that he should send him a host to aid him, and he would deliver him the country and cities. He sent others also to Gazara to kill John, and unto the tribunes he sent letters to come unto him, that he might give them silver and gold and rewards. And others he sent to take Jerusalem and the mountain of the temple. Now one had run afore to Gazara, and told John that his father and brethren were slain, and, quoth he, Ptolemy had sent to slay thee also. Hereof when he had heard, he was sore astonished. So he had laid hands on them that were come to destroy him, and slew them, for he knew that they sought to make him away. As concerning the rest of the acts of John, and his wars, and worthy deeds which he did, and the building of the walls which he made, and his doings, behold, these are written in the chronicles of his priesthood, from the time he was made high priest after his father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's I wanted to hop back into this video a little bit, and then there's just so much to go into. One of these days we might just have to decide to go through all of Maccabees because such a rich history that we have here. But yeah, let's hop back into the video. This right here is showing the chart of the Hasmonean dynasty. Aristobulus right here. Then going down to, you had Hyrcanus and Aristobulus II. But yeah, let's go ahead. And then down here, the first Herod, King Herod. Yeah, you'll see that it is a common pattern that people often, you had a first and a second and a third, sometimes a fourth and a fifth. But like I believe in the case of Herod, there was at least like 4 of them. But let's continue.
Ancient Judea, descendants of the Maccabee family and leaders of the Maccabean Revolt against the Seleucid dynasty. Circa 140 BC, the country was already fully independent and governed by the Hasmonean dynasty. By this time, the Hebrew Bible was complete. At the junction of the 2 testaments, Judea remained an independent kingdom up until 63 BC, when it was conquered by the Romans. During the rule of the Hasmoneans, several trends or schools emerged within the community of the faithful, each school producing its own literature. From the milieu of the Pharisees, the first records of the oral law, the predecessor of the Talmud, the central text of rabbinic Judaism, the primary source of Jewish civil and religious law and theology. The second book of Maccabees, circa 120 BC, and the Psalms of Solomon, circa 63 BC, appeared. The adherents of the Hasmonean dynasty, close to the party of the Sadducees, created the first book of Maccabees, circa 100 BC. First Maccabees is a book written in Hebrew by an anonymous Jewish author after the restoration of an independent Jewish kingdom by the Hasmonean dynasty around the late 2nd century BC. The book is held as canonical scripture by the Catholic, Orthodox, and mostly Oriental Orthodox churches, but not by Protestant denominations. It is not part of the Hebrew Bible. Some Protestants consider it to be an apocryphal book. In the circles belonging to the Order of the Essenes, the Qumran literature, the Book of Jubilees, and the other apocrypha emerged circa 2nd to 1st centuries BC. In Alexandria, the Hellenized Jews of the diaspora enjoyed their own rich literature, various treatises, dramas, commentaries, and historical compositions. The most prominent among these are the Book of the Wisdom of Solomon, circa 50 BC, and the writings of Philo of Alexandria, circa 25 BC to 50s AD.
And I just wanted to pause and say real quick, like as we've showed going all the way back, you had this breakup of the generals roughly around 300 BC. You had a lot of the Hellenization that was going on, willingly and unwillingly, from easily 300 BC. Some could argue even before that, because there were definitely Judeans that did help the Greeks overthrow the Persians. But this time period of people forsaking their customs and cultures and heritage, there was going to be, so let's do the math. 300 BC to right now, we're talking about when the writings of Philo of Alexandria were written, talking about 25 BC. So we're talking about what, 275 years roughly? Now, if you fast forward this to the times that a lot of the books in the New Testament are written, we're talking about Paul, which Paul, his time frame is easily what about what is it? I would say maybe 200, 300 AD, something like that. I might have it a little bit off. Let me double check. But we're talking about easily hundreds of years, and I don't think it's factored in how long of a period of Hellenization that went on between the Israelites from the Greek time period, or well, some even the Persian time period, to the Greek time period, to the Roman time period, to them living in these different provinces all over the Mediterranean areas of Europe, whether that be in certain parts of Turkey, which I know most of Turkey is in Asia. There's part in Europe, but you have Greek, and then you have the Roman provinces also. Let's see. So let's look up Paul's time frame.
If Wikipedia is to be believed, from 48 to 66 AD.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to look it up, because that didn't sound right. I'm thinking like that's probably closer to John when he's writing the book of Revelations. It's probably like 300. So 200 couldn't be right. No, that can't be right. The reason why that can't be right is because I don't know. I mean, technically, if they're basically saying that Paul wrote this before 70 AD, I don't know. That's not the point right now. I can look that up, but I would tend to disagree that Paul was writing that before 70 AD. Let's see. Pacheco Ronas, and he said, "There's some really interesting stuff in those Dead Sea Scrolls and of the Qumran Essenes." Yes, it is, and that's the reason why I think that people need to do more time to actually research it and understand it, what is going on, so they can get a better picture and understanding of these time periods. So I guess there's a little bit more of this video. Let's see, but yeah, I mean. Let's see. Well, no, wait a minute. Okay, let me do this in head math. Okay, so that would mean Christ would have been crucified around. Oh well, I mean, I guess that could be all right. Christ would have been crucified around. Well, let's see. Then I don't necessarily agree that they have the time frame of Christ correct either. But let's not get into my textual criticism for a moment. Let's just go with, okay, conventional knowledge says that he would have died around 33 AD. So according to that logic, Paul could have, everything that Paul was doing happened literally right before the so-called Roman Jewish wars, which 70 AD time frame would have been what, 63 AD to about 73 AD, roughly. So I guess they're saying Paul's ministry literally like right after Paul was out of the picture, it was destruction of the temple, which let's not argue that. I don't know. What's your thoughts, Jose?
It's honestly the first time that I'm hearing that there was a second Apocrypha or even a Psalms of Solomon.
I've heard some of these. Now, do I necessarily hold to all of them? I mean, it's just like the Book of Jasher. Were there literal were there fragments of it? Yes, where they can read a couple of words here and there, but was there enough to have a whole book? No. Is there a book of Mary out there, a book of Thomas out there? Yes. But is there any ancient writings to connect or verify any of that? No. And then even the same thing with a book of Enoch. Do I believe there was a book of Enoch? Yeah. Do I believe that the book of Enoch, which is in like what the Ethiopian Bible, is the same? Or the book of Jasher or Jubilee? No. But these actually have manuscripts and can be verified that they go back. And also just secular history confirms a lot of what was going on in these other books. So if it starts going against the Bible, I tend not to listen to it. Here, let's finish this video off.
AD, who attempted to combine the Old Testament teachings with the philosophy of antiquity. Many of the books written in the last 2 centuries BC already go beyond the framework of the biblical tradition. Yet they are important for the interpreters of the scriptures, as they form, as it were, a bridge between the Old and the New Testaments. The messianic hopes and the ethical teachings of the scribes created the atmosphere that has anticipated and made provisions for the preaching of the gospel.
All right. Okay. All right. So what do you think of that the last part? It kind of started going a little different for me, but I think a lot of the information was good in the beginning. Yeah, I do recommend people definitely go in and read these 2 books. Actually, read the whole entire Apocrypha, because most Christians have never even I did it too. I waffled on the fact of, should I even take this book serious? Should I even read it? Yes, you should. Absolutely. And being somebody who has followed a lot of secular history, especially in the Mediterranean, I was able to say, wow, a lot of this stuff I do know who these people are they're talking about here. I can sit there and show them in various other history books in different cultures. So, anything else that you wanted to say on it?
Nope. I'm ready to dive into Christmas.
Let's see where my links are that I sent myself. Oh yeah. Oh, that's right. Should I start with Truth Unedited, or yeah, let's start with Truth Unedited.
Such a cool guy.
Yeah, he is. Hold on, let me back it up. He has of course, we disagree with some of the stuff he says, but that's not the point. All right, so I got it at my mark. Let's get into the origins of Christianity. And in order for you to understand the origins of Christianity, you got to understand a little bit about paganism. All right, so it didn't go back.
Of Christmas. The first thing you should know is that Christmas was celebrated long before Yahshua was ever born. Again, to understand the ancient world and their beliefs, part 1 of...
Oh shoot, didn't mean to do that. Jose, get me Jeremiah
10 and
yeah.
I already know.
Yeah, you already know. You already know what I want.
Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 2. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen, with the axe. They deck it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good.
Now, I had him read that one is because for a lot of those people in Christianity who were saying, oh, well, we got to put the Christ back in Christmas. It's nonsensical. For one, anybody who's done any kind of studying of the Bible would know that it's impossible from just what the scriptures are saying that he would have been born anywhere near this time period. That's one of the first things that I would say. So whose birthday are you celebrating if his birth isn't anywhere around this time period? I mean, are we supposed to believe that they were out there with that shepherds were out there with their sheep at the time when there's snow on the ground, and that people are getting crops out of the ground at the same time when it's the dead of winter? Is that what we're supposed to believe? I don't know. Do you have a precept there?
I was actually gonna go into Luke chapter 2. Like at the moment Yahushua is born.
Yeah. Oh, going ahead. Read that account. That's perfect.
Luke chapter 2 and verse 6. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger. That's another word for like a crib.
Yeah.
Right. Because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in their field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And
so, like you guys heard, the flock, the shepherds are sleeping outside. What did they have? Sleeping bags and tents and all that? So they were just sleeping out in the snow.
Not the ideal temperature for a newborn child.
No.
And all the sheep were round about, so like naturally in the coldness they would all be bundled together in one place, but no such description of anything cold or winter happening. So it's impossible that he was born on December 25th.
Oh yeah, by the way, what were those sheep eating? I mean, what were the sheep eating snow? Because I don't know if you guys realize or been around sheep, but sheep a lot of times graze grass. So even let's say it wasn't snow on the ground, it was probably at least frozen. They were eating icicles. I don't know. It's just a thought there. Then it's something.
Now I'm curious. Like, if it. Let me see. Okay. No, I was wondering how cold, like if it gets to the point of snowing in Israel, like during December 25th, then 55 degrees. I'm imagining
that's 50, but that's 55 during the day.
49 degrees at night.
So that means, as an average, it can get colder.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Here, just look. Does it snow in Israel?
Okay.
You'll see. Does it snow in Israel? That's a yes.
Alrighty, let's keep going with truth on it.
All right, yeah, I'll pull that up just so I can prove what I'm saying. Well, I don't know how to determine millimeters, but the average snowfall in Bethlehem, Israel, is around 530 millimeters every year. Don't know how much that is. Don't know how much that is. That sounds like it's not a small amount. Let me look up something else. So they have at least three snowfall, snowfall days. So in January, it says the coldest month of the year, Bethlehem, is January with an average low of 41. So December is getting pretty close to January. Saying it's not possibly that it's getting into the 40s at night and you're sleeping overnight outside. Yeah, that doesn't pass the sniff test for me. But all right, let's get into it.
The first thing you should know is that Christmas was celebrated long before Yahshua was ever born. Again, to understand the ancient world and their beliefs, part 1 of my History of Religion series will give you a great deal of background. But ever since the time of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz, pagans have celebrated the birth of their sun god on December 25th. It obviously was never called Christmas, but it was a pagan festival celebrated on the winter solstice. Here's the background understanding. Shortly after Nimrod was killed, Semiramis became pregnant and found another way to stay in power. She told the people it was the spirit of Nimrod that impregnated her. She claimed she was having a virgin birth from the spirit of Nimrod. She claimed to have slept with no man and that she was impregnated by Nimrod's spirit. Nimrod was now a father and Semiramis was the mother. This is the start and beginning of father and mother god worship. It is the primary driver of polytheism. This is where the Madonna and child imagery comes from. Semiramis managed to convince her followers that Nimrod did not die, but he ascended to the sun. She claimed it was the rays of the sun god Nimrod that caused her to conceive. He was now to be worshipped now as Baal, the sun god. The sun's name was Tammuz.
And I want to pause that real quick. Sun god, Apollo, Sol Invictus, because in Greece it's Apollo. In Rome it's Sol Invictus, and there's other names for sun gods. Nimrod just being one of them. So this whole father god, mother god, virgin birth. Of course, I don't know if you guys realize it, but we do not believe in the virgin birth. Christians believe in virgin birth, but yeah, I'll let him get back to it. Anything you want to add?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. All right.
He was now the son of God. He was the sun god reborn. And he was born on the winter solstice. His birthday is recorded in our modern calendar as December 20th.
I stopped it because I wanted to go through some of those so we can look at it. We have Tammuz, who was born 2600 BC, December 25th. Krishna was born 3228, December 25th. Mithra of Persia, born 1500 BC, December 25th. Horus of Egypt, 2500 BC, December 25th. Buddha of India, 563 BC, December 25th. Bedua, I'm not sure who that is. God of the Orient, born 1027 BC, December 25th. Quetzalcoatl, God of the Western Hemisphere, 900 BC, December 25th, which I'm not sure that one's necessarily correct, but we'll keep going. Hercules, son of Zeus, born around 500 BC, December 25th, and I can't see what I'm covering on the last one. Let me go and see if I can see it. Attis of Phrygia, born around 1200 BC, and then you have Osiris of Egypt, born 2500 BC. And Nimrod also refers into Baal worship. I don't know if you guys saw the last video that I uploaded. Definitely check it out. Let's read this. It says, Nimrod, who eventually came to be worshipped as Baal, according to the ancient Babylonian tradition. Semiramis, later known as the goddess Astara, Asherah, Astora, Isis, Ishtar, Easter, queen of heaven, and other pagan religions, claimed that after the untimely death of her son Tammuz, which Tammuz was killed by a pig, which goes into why a lot of people want to have ham during these holidays. and husband Nimrod, a full-grown evergreen tree, sprang up overnight from a dead tree stump. Semiramis claimed that Nimrod would visit the evergreen tree and leave gifts each year on the anniversary of Tammuz's birth, which happened to be on December 25th, the true origin of the Christmas tree. And it goes throughout the Bible, many other scriptures talking about people worshiping in the groves, and that worshiping was into Tammuz or Nimrod. You pull up was Ezekiel, was it Ezekiel 8?
Let me see.
Because there is a precedent for them talking about Tammuz in the Bible. I think it's what 8
Yeah.
and
Yeah, you're right.
8 and 14.
Yep.
Yeah.
Book of Ezekiel, chapter 8 and verse. I'll start at 13.
Okay.
Ezekiel 8 and Book of Ezekiel, chapter 8 and verse 13. He said also unto me, turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations that they do. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was towards the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Then said he unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than these.
I'm trying to remember another scripture. It's escaping my memory right now, where it starts talking about them passing the babies through the fire also, and having to do with, Baal, and which Baal and Nimrod, all of that stuff is all that worship goes into the same thing. It's worshiping the same thing, just changing the names. So let's get back to truth.
December 25th. This story goes throughout all the different pagan nations' beliefs. In Egypt, they worship Horus, child of Isis and Osiris. In ancient Persia, they celebrated the sun god reborn, Mithra, on December 25th. In ancient Greece, they celebrated Adonis, and Rome celebrated Apollo. That's what paganism is. These Gentile nations worship the same god within the same story, just with different names. But this reborn sun god's birthday was celebrated during the winter solstice. Sun worship is one of the main pillars of all pagan religions. Sun worshippers and nature religions held major celebrations at the winter solstice, which is, as they believe, the victory of the strength of the sun over the forces of darkness that try to suppress it. So this is the background of pagans' worship on this day, long before Yahshua ever entered the scene. So let's discuss.
So that's why I'll leave it there. You guys can go and check this whole video out at Christmas History, Bible and Pagans, the Truth, at Truth Unedited. I got another video I'll hop to. Let me minimize this. I got one more video. I want to make sure that I get it in and still keep us around that 2 hour mark. I find that when the videos aren't nearly as long, people are more likely to want to click on them. So, and eventually what we'll start doing is, even if we have a long stream, we're going to probably stream longer sometimes. What I'll do is I will have us do one topic, stop the stream, and then start a second stream right after. That way the videos at least be broken up. But I don't know if you've ever seen this one about Saturnalia and in ancient Rome. How familiar are you with Saturnalia?
Is that the one where the Statue of Liberty is modeled after?
No, but I know which you're.
Oh, that was Semiramis.
Yeah, that's yeah, Semiramis they used her in a bunch of different forms, Libertad and stuff like that.
Okay, I confused Saturnalia with Semiramis. Whoops.
Yeah, and that's going into Ishtar or Isis and all that stuff, and that is that would tie in more with Easter.
Mm.
But and I didn't have time to do all the deep research on the whole. Well, pull up the videos and sources I wanted to pull up, but even the Yule log, um, from some cultures, it's something separate, but some it is talking about that they burned a log for a whole entire year, and it was supposed to, as long as that log went, they tried to find the largest log possible and burn that, and that was supposed to guarantee them a happy harvest or something. It goes into like Viking tradition, but then there's also some pagan traditions that said that that is a memorial to back to Baal worship, when women would give their babies to Baal, and the kids would pass through the fire. And they say that that log is a remembrance of when they used to do that. So I'm not saying that that's exactly what the Yule log is. I do know that it does go back to Viking traditions, definitely. And like fun fact, I guess what the national broadcast system says is that the tradition in America for the Yule log is they had breaks on TV spots where 30 minutes, an hour, long period, and they didn't have any kind of programming they wanted to play, so they just put the Yule log on. That's what they say. So here's one on Saturnalia, which, tell me if Saturnalia does not sound. Now, I do have another one where I do have sources. If you guys want that one, make sure to DM me. I can give you all the sources on the different, Roman, not emperors. I guess maybe they're emperors, whatever. I don't really care, but different Roman leaders in high society, how that they were celebrating, literally how they celebrated, and in their notes what they talked about with Saturnalia. And tell me if the things you hear about Saturnalia do not sound very similar to Christmas. Now keep in mind, Saturnalia, or worship to Saturn, predates Christianity by quite a bit. And it's kind of interesting that both of these things, Christmas, the way it's celebrated, and Saturnalia, both of these things come out of the Roman Empire. But let's play.
That hundreds of years before Christmas was the most jolly festival in December, there was a week-long festival in ancient Rome dedicated to the god Saturn. Hello and welcome to Ancient History Encyclopedia. My name is Kelly, and today we're going to be exploring the history of Saturnalia, the equally as festive predecessor of Christmas. Don't forget, the easiest way to support us is to give this video a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any new uploads. Io Saturnalia. The Saturnalia was a week-long festival celebrated in ancient Rome between the 17th and the 23rd of December in honor of the god Saturn. Saturn, although a fairly mysterious figure in Roman mythology, was the god of agriculture and had a fairly prominent temple in the Roman Forum. Despite claims by Livy that says the festival began in the 5th century BCE, there is evidence that suggests a much older history. It began as a one-day festival, but by the late Republic, it had extended to cover an entire week. Saturnalia was a jolly and festive time, which consisted of eating, drinking, games, partying, and merrymaking for all. The people's usual lives came to a halt, with businesses closing, people given holidays, and the informal, colourful clothing known as synthesis being worn, rather than the usual formal toga. The cult statue of Saturn had his ankles tied by woolen bonds throughout the year, but these were loosened during the Saturnalia. The act of loosening the bonds of the god Saturn caused the deity to be associated with liberation, which was a prominent aspect of the Saturnalia. The social conventions and tight social structure of ancient Rome was not only relaxed, but partially reversed during this time.
Which I wanted to inject this real quick because, of course, she gives a very romanced version of this. But they also, part of their traditions, because ancient Rome had a heavy slave population, and they were really big into slavery. Um, it's reported that somewhere between 25 to 40% of Rome's populations were slaves. And on this holiday, part of the liberation, so called, they would have a day where the slave masters would do some kind of like role reversal. That's what it said. But what I've heard in practice is they would allow for, to an extent, the slaves to talk back. They wanted the slaves to talk back to them and mock them. And I heard that they would actually have like the kids kind of, they could boss around the slave master's kids a little bit to an extent. But I heard that those were kind of the customs and rules of it, but they would often break that. But I just wanted to put that in there while she kind of romances this a little bit. What's up, Hamza? It's good to see you in here. But yeah, I'll get back into it.
Time of revelry. Although the slaves still had to make the meals, they were able to eat in the same room as their masters, often being served by their masters, and were able to do and say as they wished. The masters wore the felt hat of the freed slave, known as the pileus, and a Saturnalicius princeps, or leader of the Saturnalia, was chosen. This person, also known as the Lord of Misrule, was chosen from the lower members of the household and had the right to conduct light-hearted mayhem. The partying, drinking, and general merrymaking continued through day 2 of the Saturnalia, and on day 3 was the Feast of Opalia, a celebration of Ops, the wife of Saturn. Ops was an earth goddess and was the Roman deity of the harvest and fertility. Although Ops was celebrated in a festival in August at the end of the harvest season called the Opicon Siva, she was also celebrated on the 3rd day of the Saturnalia. The end of the Saturnalia was marked by the most important tradition of the festival, gift-giving. These were often small trinkets or jellied figs, but the most popular gifts were the small terracotta figures known as sigilla, which took the forms of deities, heroes like Hercules, or common and sometimes comical figures associated with the giver or the recipient. Candles were another very popular gift because the Saturnalia was associated with the winter solstice and the coming of the light through the birth of the sun god Sol Invictus on the 23rd of December. Candles not only represented the light of the god, but each individual's personal quest for truth and righteousness. The month of December was used to prepare for the week-long festivities, including purchasing the sigilla from the special markets known as the sigillaria, which gives its name to the end of the festival. People greeted each other with the customary Io Saturnalia, and at the end of the festival, the ankles of Saturn were tied up again until next year, and the social order was restored. The influence of Saturnalia on the Christian celebration of Christmas was direct and includes the decoration of homes with garlands and lights, general merrymaking, feasting, and gift-giving. The holiday was so popular among the Romans that the early church couldn't stamp it out, and so they incorporated it into the Christian calendar, with Christ replacing Saturn and Sol Invictus in the celebrations. The Saturnalia was known as the jolliest of Roman festivals, and the poet Catullus described it as the best of times. So what aspects of Saturnalia would you incorporate into your Christmas celebrations? Let us know down in the comments below. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any new uploads. Io Saturnalia.
Which, something I wanted to throw in there, which she said. Some people say Saturnalia or Saturn sounds a whole lot like Satan. If you drop a certain letter in there and move things around, you drop that R, and it can sound a lot like Satan. The same thing if you move the A and the N around at the end of Santa. Also, you notice that he has a sickle in his hand. Well, who else wore kind of a robe with a hood and had a sickle? Death. I mean, so, and she's saying, well, he's kind of mysterious. Well, you don't think that any of this could possibly be tying back to Baal worship or any of that stuff? I don't know. Just wanted to throw that out there. And also, if let's say it translates into Satan or Satan worship. The word io in Italian means I am. So just putting that out. Io, Jose is like yo soy.
Yep.
So just wanted to put that out there. Yeah, Hamza said Rome had many slaves, and it also led to, the whole, what is it? I am Spartacus, and Spartacus being a runaway slave, and I'll leave it at that. I mean, she made it seem as if that was the overall rules, and when it went in its best forms. But it was also reported that a lot of those slave masters did not ever allow a slave to eat with them. If you read into people like Seneca, for instance, Seneca did not allow a slave to eat with him. And there was there's probably easily a good 10 different, like Roman emperors that you can go into, or Caesars that you can go into, that they did not. They might have made it sound like, oh, it was a fun time, but I guarantee you, somebody got drunk in there, was like, what the hell did you say to me, slave? and things didn't go as fun. So I just want to put that out there. I got another one that I got a video that I'll probably be dropping this weekend going over New Year's and its pagan roots and history. Also, hopefully this was educational and hopefully entertaining also. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. I got one other video that I got in the backdrop that I'm working on that I'll probably drop maybe sometime. Yeah, this one will be coming out either this weekend or sometime this weekend. So guess that is all I have to say. Jose, since you're back, would you like to take us out?
Call Topala Yahweh, Bashima Mashiach Yahushai. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God Yahweh. And with that, we say Shalom.
Shalom.